I always thought I had the perfect life. A beautiful wife, a good job, and a family that I believed was supportive. My name is Daniel, and I've been married to Sarah for 8 years. We met in college, fell in love quickly, and decided to spend our lives together. Sarah was everything I ever wanted: smart, funny, ambitious, and breathtakingly beautiful. Everyone who met her fell for her charm, including my family. My father, Robert, had always been somewhat of a distant figure in my life. After my mother died from cancer when I was 15, he buried himself in work, leaving me to essentially raise myself during my teenage years. As I grew older, we managed to establish a somewhat stable relationship, though it was never what you'd call warm. Despite this, I always made efforts to include him in my life's important moments. When I introduced him to Sarah 6 years ago, I noticed how his eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen since before my mother's death. Sarah and my father got along surprisingly well from the start. She would often comment on how charming and interesting he was, something I dismissed as her simply being kind. "Your father is such a fascinating man," she would say. "You're lucky to have him." I remember feeling a strange mix of pride and unease when she said this, but I brushed it off. After all, wasn't it good that my wife and father had a positive relationship? In the years that followed, we settled into married life. Sarah advanced quickly in her career as a marketing executive while I worked steadily as an architect at a respected firm. We bought a house in the suburbs, discussed having children someday, and seemed to be living the American dream. For our 5th anniversary, we decided to take a trip to Hawaii, a place neither of us had been. When Sarah suggested we invite my father along since he had recently retired, I agreed without hesitation. "It'll be good for him," she insisted. "He seems so lonely lately." The vacation was planned for 2 weeks in Maui, staying at a luxury resort with private beach access. We booked 2 separate villas, one for Sarah and me and another for my father, though they were adjacent to each other. As the trip approached, I noticed Sarah becoming increasingly enthusiastic about it, spending hours researching activities and restaurants. "I want this to be perfect for all of us," she said with a smile that, in hindsight, held secrets I couldn't begin to imagine. We arrived in Maui on a warm June afternoon. The resort was even more beautiful than the pictures online had suggested, with lush gardens, infinity pools, and a pristine white beach. As we checked in, the staff welcomed us with traditional leis and fruity cocktails. My father seemed genuinely happy, more relaxed than I had seen him in years. "This was a wonderful idea," he said, patting Sarah's shoulder in a way that lingered just a moment too long. But again, I thought nothing of it. The first few days of the vacation were incredible. We went snorkeling, took a helicopter tour of the island, and enjoyed lavish meals at the resort's restaurants. Sarah was radiant, wearing flowing sundresses and tiny bikinis that showcased her fit body. I caught my father glancing at her more than once, but I dismissed it as natural appreciation for a beautiful woman. After all, Sarah was stunning, and my father was still a man with eyes. On the 4th night, Sarah suggested we all have dinner at the most exclusive restaurant on the resort property. She dressed carefully for the occasion, wearing a sleek red dress with a plunging neckline that I'd never seen before. "Is that new?" I asked as she applied her makeup. "Just something I picked up for the trip," she replied casually. I wanted to look nice for our special dinner. During the meal, I noticed Sarah and my father engaging in conversation that seemed to exclude me. They shared inside jokes I wasn't privy to and discussed topics they apparently had talked about before without me. When I asked when they had discussed these things, Sarah quickly responded, "Oh, I called Robert a few times to coordinate surprise activities for you on this trip." It seemed plausible, so I let it go, though a faint discomfort began to gnaw at me. After dinner, Sarah complained of a migraine, something she occasionally suffered from, and said she needed to lie down in our villa. "You two should go have a drink at the bar," she suggested. "Have some father-son time." My father agreed enthusiastically, and I reluctantly went along with the plan, not wanting to abandon him. As we left, I saw Sarah head toward our villa, rubbing her temples in apparent pain. At the bar, my father and I had a surprisingly good conversation, perhaps the most open we'd had in years. He talked about missing my mother, his regrets about being distant during my teenage years, and how happy he was that I had found someone like Sarah. "She's special," he said, staring into his whiskey. "You're a lucky man." There was something in his tone that felt off, but the alcohol had made me mellow, and I was enjoying this rare moment of connection. After a couple of hours and several drinks, I decided to check on Sarah. My father said he would stay for one more drink, so I headed back to our villa alone. As I approached, I noticed the lights were off, suggesting Sarah might be asleep. Not wanting to disturb her if her migraine was still bad, I quietly entered using my keycard. The villa was dark and quiet, but something felt immediately wrong. Sarah's sandals, which she had been wearing at dinner, were not by the door where she typically left them. Thinking perhaps she had felt better and gone for a walk on the beach, I checked the bedroom. The bed was made and didn't appear to have been slept in. Confused and slightly concerned, I decided to check if perhaps she had gone to my father's villa to leave us a note or message about where she had gone. As I approached my father's villa, I noticed the lights were on and heard faint music playing. Relief washed over me. Sarah must have felt better and decided to wait for us there rather than sit alone in our dark villa. I was about to knock when I heard it, my wife's laugh, that distinctive melodic sound I had fallen in love with years ago. But there was something different about it now. It was lower, more intimate, the kind of laugh I had only heard in our most private moments. I froze, my hands suspended in midair. Then I heard another sound that made my blood run cold, my father's voice, murmuring something I couldn't distinguish, followed by Sarah shushing him playfully. My mind raced, trying to construct innocent explanations, but a sickening feeling in my gut told me that something was very wrong. Instead of knocking, I moved to the side of the villa where the curtains weren't fully drawn. Through the narrow gap, I could see into the living room area. What I saw next would forever be burned into my memory. Sarah was sitting on my father's lap, dressed only in her underwear, her red dress discarded on the floor. My father's hands were on her waist, his lips on her neck. As I watched in horrified disbelief, Sarah turned and kissed him deeply on the mouth, the kind of passionate kiss that spoke of familiarity rather than a first-time transgression. I must have made a sound because suddenly they both looked toward the window. Our eyes met, Sarah's widened in shock, while my father's face drained of color. I stumbled backward, nearly falling over a decorative plant pot. Without thinking, I ran back to our villa, my mind a chaotic mess of images and emotions. Minutes later, Sarah burst into the villa, hastily dressed with her hair disheveled. "Daniel, please, I can explain," she cried, tears already streaming down her face. But what explanation could there possibly be for what I had just witnessed? "How long?" I demanded, my voice hardly recognizable even to myself. "How long has this been going on?" Sarah collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing. "It just happened," she lied, and I knew immediately it was a lie because nothing about what I had seen suggested a first-time encounter. "We had too much to drink and—" "Don't insult my intelligence," I cut her off. "That wasn't a drunk mistake. You kissed him like you've done it 100 times before." Her hesitation told me everything I needed to know. 6 months, she finally whispered, unable to meet my eyes. "It started 6 months ago when you were on that business trip to Chicago." The room seemed to spin around me as the implications of her confession sank in. 6 months. Half a year of betrayal, lies, and deception from the two people I should have been able to trust most in this world. "Why?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. "Why him of all people?" Sarah's next words cut deeper than I thought possible. "He reminds me of you," she said quietly, "but more established, more confident. He knows what he wants and doesn't hesitate to take it." She looked up at me then, a flash of defiance in her eyes despite her tears. "When was the last time you took charge like that, Daniel? When was the last time you surprised me or took a risk?" I felt as though I'd been physically struck. All these years, I had thought Sarah appreciated my steady, reliable nature, my careful planning and consideration. Now she was throwing it back in my face as a weakness, comparing me unfavorably to my own father. "So this trip," I said slowly as realization dawned on me. "This wasn't about a family vacation at all, was it? You wanted 2 weeks with him and I was just—" "What? The cover story." Sarah didn't deny it. "We never get to spend more than a few hours together," she admitted. I thought we could have more time here while you were distracted with activities and excursions." The calculated nature of their plan made me nauseous. Just then, there was a knock at the door. My father stood there, looking haggard and old suddenly, the confident man I had had drinks with just an hour ago now replaced by someone who appeared broken. "Son," he began, his voice cracking. "I know there's nothing I can say to make this right." "Don't," I interrupted, unable to bear hearing his excuses. "Don't call me son, you lost that right tonight." I looked between them, these two strangers who wore the faces of people I loved. "I'm leaving tomorrow morning. You can both stay and enjoy the rest of your vacation together since that's what you planned anyway." Sarah reached for me, desperation in her eyes. "Daniel, please, we can work through this. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. A 6-month mistake," I laughed bitterly. "A mistake you planned an entire vacation around continuing." I shook my head. "I need to be alone. I'm going to get another room for tonight." I began throwing some essential items into a small bag. My father stepped forward. "Use my villa," he offered. "Sarah and I can." "Don't you dare finish that sentence," I warned, a dangerous edge to my voice that made him step back. "Don't pretend you're doing me a favor when all you're really suggesting is that you and my wife sleep together openly now instead of behind my back." I left them both standing there and went to the resort's front desk, where I requested another room as far from our original villas as possible. The staff, noting my distress but professional enough not to pry, quickly arranged a room on the opposite side of the resort. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every interaction between Sarah and my father that I had witnessed over the years, searching for signs I had missed. Morning came, and with it, a strange calm had settled over me. I contacted the airline and changed my flight to one leaving that afternoon. Then I returned to our original villa to pack my things. Sarah was there, sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "You're really leaving," she said. "It wasn't a question. Did you think I would stay?" I asked as I methodically packed my suitcase. "I thought you might want to talk about it," she replied. "To understand." I paused and looked at her directly. "What's to understand? You had an affair with my father. You betrayed me in the most painful way possible. You invited him on our anniversary vacation so you could continue your affair. It's all very clear." "It's not that simple," she protested. "I love you, Daniel. I never stopped loving you." "But you love him too." I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. She hesitated, and in that hesitation I had my answer. "It's different with him," she finally said. "It's more primal." I zipped up my suitcase with finality. "Keep the villa," I said. "I've paid for it through the end of the 2 weeks. Consider it my parting gift to you both." The bitterness in my voice was palpable. As I headed for the door, Sarah called out, "What happens when we get back home?" I turned to face her one last time. "When I get back, I'll be contacting a divorce attorney. I suggest you do the same. As for where you'll live, that's not my concern anymore. I'm sure my father would be happy to take you in." The taxi ride to the airport was a blur. I boarded my flight feeling numb, as though I was moving through a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. It wasn't until the plane was in the air, high above the beautiful island that had been the site of my life's destruction, that the full weight of what had happened finally hit me. I covered my face with my hands and silently wept, mourning the loss of both my marriage and the father I thought I knew. Back home, our house felt empty and tainted. Every room held memories of Sarah, her books on the shelves, her clothes in the closet, her favorite mug in the kitchen cabinet. I couldn't bear to touch any of it. Instead, I went to my laptop and began searching for divorce attorneys, making an appointment with the most highly rated one for the following day. That night, my phone lit up with messages and calls from both Sarah and my father. I ignored them all, instead losing myself in work documents and mindless television until exhaustion finally claimed me in the early hours of the morning. The meeting with the attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer Reynolds, was straightforward. I laid out the facts of Sarah's infidelity without emotion, as though I was discussing someone else's failing marriage. Jennifer listened carefully, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Infidelity is a straightforward ground for divorce," she explained when I had finished. "However, property division can still be complicated depending on your financial situation. I'll need details about all your assets." We spent the next hour going through my financial information. As Jennifer reviewed the documents, she frowned slightly. "Mr. Mitchell, it says here that your family home is solely in your name, but your wife has been making half the mortgage payments. Is that correct?" I nodded. "The down payment came from an inheritance from my mother, so the bank put only my name on the deed, but we've shared all expenses equally since we moved in." Jennifer made a note. "And your retirement accounts." The statements show some recent unusual activity. Confused, I took the statements she pushed across the desk. There were indeed several transfers that I didn't recognize. Small amounts moved to an account number I didn't recognize, dating back about 6 months. The timing struck me immediately, coinciding exactly with the start of Sarah's affair with my father. "I didn't make these transfers," I said slowly. "Sarah must have. You'll want to freeze these accounts immediately," Jennifer advised. "And check any other joint accounts or accounts she has access to." By the time I left the attorney's office, my sense of betrayal had deepened even further. Not only had Sarah been unfaithful emotionally and physically, but she had also been planning her escape financially, siphoning off small amounts that I wouldn't notice, but that would add up over time. Back home, I went straight to my office and began digging through our financial records, looking for more evidence of Sarah's deception. It was while searching for bank statements on my laptop that I found something far worse than I could have imagined. I had opened my laptop to search for our financial documents when I noticed that Sarah's email account was still logged in on the browser. She must have forgotten to sign out before we left for Hawaii. I hesitated only briefly before clicking on it, my moral qualms about invading her privacy now seeming laughably irrelevant given her betrayal. There, in her sent items folder, was an email to a divorce attorney dated just 2 weeks before our Hawaii trip. The subject line read, "Financial documentation as requested." I clicked on it with trembling hands. "As discussed in our meeting," Sarah had written, "I'm attaching the financial statements you requested. As you can see, I've been transferring $500 each week from my husband's inheritance account into my personal savings account for the past 6 months. He has no idea about this arrangement, and I've been careful to ensure the transfers don't appear on the statements he reviews." I scrolled down to continue reading, my horror mounting with each word. "In total, I've accumulated $12,000 so far, which should be enough to secure a new apartment and cover initial legal fees once I file for divorce. I plan to continue these transfers for as long as possible before he notices." Attached to the email were PDF files of our bank statements with the unauthorized transfers highlighted. But what struck me even harder than the financial betrayal was the final paragraph of her email. "As for the other matter we discussed, yes, I can confirm that my relationship with my father-in-law has progressed to the point where he has offered to provide additional financial support once I leave my husband. While I realize this may complicate the divorce proceedings, I believe it's worth noting that Robert, my father-in-law, has significant assets that could benefit me in reaching a favorable settlement." I sat back in my chair, the air knocked from my lungs. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated plan to leave me, financially drain me, and then use my own father's wealth as leverage against me in divorce proceedings. And the Hawaii trip had been part of their scheme all along, perhaps a final vacation at my expense before she left me. My hands shaking with rage and hurt, I took screenshots of everything and forwarded them to my own email and to Jennifer, my divorce attorney. I then forwarded them to my father as well, with a simple message: "Is this the kind of woman you betrayed your son for?" Then, making a decision I knew was petty but couldn't help, I logged into our joint accounts and transferred all the funds, minus the exact $12,000 Sarah had stolen from me, into a new account only I could access. Let her panic when she discovered her safety net was gone. The next few days passed in a blur of legal consultations, financial rearrangements, and sleepless nights. I hadn't heard from Sarah directly, but my father had sent several messages, each more desperate than the last, begging for a chance to explain. I deleted them all unread. Then 5 days after I had left Hawaii, I received a text from Sarah that simply read, "I'm coming home tomorrow, we need to talk." I didn't respond, but I spent that day removing her things from our bedroom, packing them carefully into boxes that I stacked in the guest room. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I simply couldn't bear to sleep in a room that still held her presence, her scent, her belongings intermingled with mine. When Sarah arrived the following afternoon, she looked terrible, sunburned, exhausted, and somehow smaller than I remembered. She stood uncertainly in the doorway of what had been our home, as though waiting for permission to enter. "Your things are in the guest room," I said by way of greeting. "I've already spoken with a divorce attorney." Sarah stepped inside, dropping her suitcase by the door. "Daniel, please. At least give me a chance to explain." "Explain what?" I asked coldly. "The affair, the money you've been stealing from me, or perhaps the plan you discussed with your divorce attorney to use my father's money against me in our settlement?" Her face paled. "How did you?" "You left your email logged in," I replied. "Not your smartest move." She sank onto the couch, her bravado crumbling. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she whispered. "No," I agreed, standing stiffly across the room from her. "I imagine in your version I remained ignorant until you were ready to leave, my bank accounts drained and my father firmly on your side." "That's not fair," she protested weakly. I laughed without humor. "Not fair? You want to talk to me about what's not fair? How about sleeping with my father? How about planning to use him to finance your divorce from his son? How about stealing from me for 6 months while pretending everything was normal between us?" Sarah began to cry, but her tears no longer moved me. "I was unhappy," she said between sobs. "You were always working, always so predictable, so safe. Robert made me feel alive, dangerous." "Spare me the details," I cut her off. "I'm not interested in hearing about what my father did for you that I couldn't." A flash of anger crossed her face. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You won't even fight for me. You won't even try to understand why I looked elsewhere." "Fight for you," I repeated incredulously. "Why would I fight for someone who has shown me so clearly that she doesn't value me, doesn't respect me, and doesn't deserve my trust? You didn't have an impulsive one-night stand, Sarah. You had a calculated 6-month affair with my father, stole money from me, and planned to use him against me in our divorce. What exactly am I supposed to be fighting for?" The truth of my words seemed to hit her, and she deflated visibly. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now you pack what you need for the immediate future," I replied. "You can arrange to get the rest later. I assume you'll be staying with my father." She looked away. "He asked me to move in with him, yes." I nodded, the final piece of betrayal slotting into place. "Then I suggest you call him to come help you with your things. I'd prefer not to be here when he arrives." As I turned to leave the room, Sarah called out, "He never meant to hurt you, you know. He loves you." I stopped but didn't turn around. "If that's what you both need to tell yourselves to sleep at night, go ahead. But we both know that's not true." I spent that evening at a hotel, unable to face the thought of being in the house while my father helped Sarah move her things. The following morning, I returned home to find several of her suitcases gone, along with some of her more personal belongings. On the kitchen counter was a note in her handwriting. "I know you won't believe me, but I am truly sorry for the pain I've caused. What started as a mistake became something I couldn't control. I've left my key. I'll have my attorney contact yours about the rest of my things." I crumpled the note and threw it away. Her words meant nothing to me now. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work, staying late at the office and bringing projects home on weekends. Anything to avoid the silence of the house and the thoughts that came with quiet moments. My colleagues noticed my change in demeanor, but attributed it to Sarah being away, as I had vaguely explained. I wasn't ready to share the humiliating truth of my situation with anyone yet. 2 weeks after Sarah had moved out, I was searching for a particular work file on my laptop when I came across a folder I didn't immediately recognize. It was labeled simply S and R and was hidden within several nested folders in my documents. Curious, I clicked on it. Inside were dozens of photos, selfies Sarah had taken with my father at various locations. Some were innocent enough, the two of them at a restaurant at a park outside a movie theater. But others were explicitly intimate, clearly taken in hotel rooms or in some cases in my own home when I had been traveling for work. The timestamps on the photos confirmed what Sarah had admitted. The affair had indeed been going on for 6 months. But what struck me cold was that some of the photos predated that time frame. There were images from over a year ago, nothing explicitly sexual, but the way they leaned into each other, the intimate smiles they shared, told a story of an emotional affair that had clearly begun long before the physical one. As I scrolled through the devastating evidence, another file caught my eye, a video file with a date from 8 months ago. With a sense of dread but unable to stop myself, I clicked on it. It was a video recording of Sarah sitting at our dining room table, my father beside her. They were discussing me, their voices clear in the quiet room. "He suspects nothing?" my father asked, his hand resting possessively on Sarah's. She shook her head, smiling. "Not a thing. He trusts me completely." "And you're sure about this, about us?" My father's voice held an uncertainty I found almost worse than his betrayal. Sarah's response was immediate and confident. "I've never been more sure of anything. We just need to be patient, build our escape fund a little at a time. Once I have enough set aside, I'll file for divorce and we can be together openly." "What about Daniel? He's still my son. This will destroy him." My father at least had the decency to appear conflicted, though not conflicted enough to end the affair. Sarah's laugh was cold, unrecognizable as belonging to the woman I had married. "He'll be fine. Daniel always lands on his feet. He's too cautious not to have a backup plan for everything. Besides, he's been neglecting me for years. This is as much his fault as ours." I slammed the laptop shut, unable to watch anymore. The casual cruelty with which Sarah had dismissed our marriage and blamed me for her choices was breathtaking. And the methodical planning they had engaged in, recording their conversations as though documenting the development of their relationship, was disturbing on a level I couldn't fully process. After several minutes of sitting in stunned silence, I reopened the laptop and began systematically copying all the files to an external hard drive. These would be valuable evidence in the divorce proceedings, further proving Sarah's infidelity and premeditation. But more than that, they were proof to myself that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't somehow imagined or exaggerated the depth of their betrayal. That night, I did something I had been avoiding since returning from Hawaii. I called my mother's sister, Aunt Elaine, who had been like a second mother to me after my mother's death. She answered on the third ring, her voice warm and familiar. "Daniel, what a lovely surprise. How are you, sweetheart?" The simple kindness in her tone broke something in me, and to my embarrassment, I found myself choking up. "Not good, Aunt Elaine, not good at all." Concern immediately filled her voice. "What's happened? Are you ill? Is it Sarah?" "Sarah's been having an affair," I managed to say, the words still painful to form. "With Dad." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long that I thought we might have been disconnected. Then, "Oh, Daniel. Oh, my poor boy." What followed was a 2-hour conversation in which I poured out the whole sordid story. Aunt Elaine listened without interruption, making only small sounds of distress or anger at particularly painful parts. When I had finished, she was quiet for a moment before speaking. "I wish I could say I'm shocked," she finally said, her voice heavy, "but your father, there was always something not quite right there, even when your mother was alive." "What do you mean?" I asked, suddenly alert. Aunt Elaine sighed. "Your mother confided in me, toward the end, that she had discovered Robert had been unfaithful several times during their marriage. She was too sick to confront him about it, too focused on spending her remaining time with you. But she made me promise that if you ever needed to know, I would tell you. This new revelation hit me like a physical blow. He cheated on Mom while she was dying. Not during her illness, no," Aunt Elaine clarified. "At least not that she knew of, but before she got sick. She found evidence, confronted him, and he promised to change. She believed him or wanted to for your sake." The parallels were eerie, my father betraying my mother as he had betrayed me, making promises he had no intention of keeping. "Why didn't you tell me before?" I asked, not accusingly but desperately trying to make sense of this new piece of the puzzle. "You idolized him despite his emotional distance," Aunt Elaine explained gently. "After losing your mother, I couldn't bear to take him from you two. Perhaps that was wrong of me." "No," I assured her. "You were protecting me, just as Mom was." After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of my living room, processing this new information. My father's betrayal wasn't just of me, but a pattern that had begun decades ago with my mother. Sarah wasn't his first transgression against family, merely his latest and most devastating one. With this realization came a strange sense of clarity. The anger that had been consuming me began to recede, replaced by something colder and more resolved. I decided then that I would not allow their actions to define the rest of my life. I would rebuild, separately from both of them, and I would make sure they received exactly what they deserved in the process, each other. And nothing more. The divorce proceedings began in earnest the following week. With the evidence I had gathered, the email to Sarah's attorney, the financial records showing her unauthorized transfers, and now the photos and video documenting their affair, my case for a favorable settlement was strong. Jennifer, my divorce attorney, was confident as we met to discuss strategy. "This is about as clear-cut a case of infidelity and financial misconduct as I've ever seen," she commented as she reviewed the new evidence I had provided. "Her conduct has been genuinely shocking. What does that mean for the division of assets?" I asked, more concerned with practical matters than moral judgments at this point. Jennifer smiled grimly. "It means we have significant leverage. Her attorney will know she won't fare well if this goes to trial, especially with a judge seeing these videos where she openly discusses stealing from you. They'll be motivated to settle quickly and quietly." "And my father?" I couldn't help asking. "Is there any legal recourse there?" Jennifer's expression softened slightly. "Unfortunately, no. Being a terrible father and a disloyal man isn't against the law. But if it offers any consolation, his relationship with Sarah is statistically unlikely to last. These kinds of relationships, born from affairs and built on deception, rarely do." I nodded, not particularly comforted but accepting the reality. "I just want this over with as quickly as possible so I can move on." "That's a healthy attitude," Jennifer approved. "And speaking of moving on, I should mention that you're under no obligation to remain in your current home. Some clients find it helpful to make a clean break. New home, new environment, new beginnings." The idea resonated with me immediately. The house, once a source of pride and comfort, now felt tainted by memories of Sarah and the knowledge that she and my father had been intimate there during my absences. "I think I'd like to look into selling," I agreed. In the weeks that followed, I divided my time between work, meetings with my attorney, and preparing the house for sale. I hired a real estate agent who was confident the property would sell quickly given the desirable neighborhood and current market conditions. As I sorted through possessions, deciding what to keep and what to discard, I was surprised by how little I felt attached to most of the items Sarah and I had accumulated together. One Saturday afternoon, as I was boxing up books in the living room, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find my father standing there, looking haggard and aged beyond his years. I moved to close the door immediately, but he wedged his foot in the opening. "Please, Daniel," he pleaded. "Just 5 minutes, that's all I ask." Against my better judgment, I relented, stepping back to allow him entry but remaining standing, arms crossed, making it clear this wasn't a social visit. He glanced around the half-packed living room, taking in the boxes and the "for sale" sign visible through the front window. "You're selling the house," he observed unnecessarily. "Yes, where will you go?" "That's not your concern anymore," I replied coldly. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. "I deserve that, I deserve all of it, but I need you to know that I never intended for any of this to happen," I laughed bitterly. "Really, because the video I found of you and Sarah planning your future together suggests otherwise." My father paled. "Video? What video?" "The one where you both sit at my dining table, discussing how you'll wait until Sarah has stolen enough money from me before she files for divorce," I replied, watching the shock register on his face. "The one where she calls me pathetic and neglectful and you agree with her." "I never agreed with that," he protested weakly. "You didn't disagree either," I pointed out. "But honestly, that's not even the worst part. The worst part is learning from Aunt Elaine that you did the same thing to Mom." At this, my father seemed to physically shrink. "Elaine told you about that? She told me you cheated on Mom multiple times, yes. That Mom found out that you promised to change and that she forgave you for my sake." My voice remained steady despite the emotion churning within me. "What she didn't tell me, what I want to know now, is whether any of those women were friends of Mom's. Did you make a habit of betraying the people closest to you with the people they trust most?" My father couldn't meet my eyes. "I made mistakes," he admitted. "Terrible mistakes that I regret every day, but I loved your mother just as I love you." "Love," I repeated incredulously. "You don't even know what the word means. Love doesn't steal your son's wife. Love doesn't betray the trust of the people who depend on you. Love doesn't destroy families." My father sank onto the edge of the sofa, his head in his hands. "I know I've done unforgivable things. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I needed you to know that Sarah and it's over." I hadn't expected this and found myself momentarily speechless. "What do you mean over?" I finally asked. "She left 2 days ago," he admitted. "Said she needed space to figure things out. She took most of her things." He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "She's been calling you, hasn't she?" I checked my phone. There were indeed 21 missed calls from Sarah over the past 2 days, calls I had ignored along with her increasingly frantic text messages pleading for me to answer. I had assumed she was trying to negotiate some aspect of the divorce settlement directly, circumventing our attorneys. "Yes," I acknowledged, "but I haven't spoken to her." My father nodded slowly. "She's not who either of us thought she was, Daniel." There was a bitter irony in hearing him say this now after everything. "The money she took from you, she's been doing the same to me. I found transfers from my accounts, small amounts I wouldn't notice, but they add up." Under different circumstances, I might have felt a twisted satisfaction in this revelation, a sense of karmic justice. Instead, I just felt tired. "So you both betrayed each other as well as me. How poetic." "I know you won't believe me," my father continued, "but I am truly sorry. Not just because I lost her, but because I lost you, because I betrayed you in the worst possible way." I studied him, this broken man who had once been my hero, then my distant father and now a stranger. "You're right. I don't believe you. I think you're sorry you got caught. I think you're sorry Sarah turned out to be a con artist who was using both of us, but I don't think you're sorry for the choices you made." "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "This isn't about fair anymore," I replied, my voice steady. "This is about consequences. You and Sarah made your choices and now you're facing the consequences. I've made my choice too, to cut both of you out of my life completely." My father stood, seeming to age another decade before my eyes. "I understand. For what it's worth, I hope someday you can find it in your heart to at least hear me out properly. Not now, not soon, but someday." "I wouldn't count on it," I said honestly. Now please leave, I have packing to finish. After he left, I finally checked the messages Sarah had been sending. They ranged from apologetic to desperate. Daniel, please call me, we need to talk. I've made a terrible mistake, please answer. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you to just hear me out. And finally, sent just an hour ago, please answer, I have nowhere to go. Your father isn't who I thought he was, I need your help. I deleted them all without responding. Whatever game Sarah was playing now, I wanted no part of it. The next morning, as I was loading boxes into my car to take to a storage unit, a taxi pulled up in front of my house. Sarah emerged, looking disheveled and exhausted, her makeup smeared as though she'd been crying. She paid the driver and then stood on the sidewalk, clutching a small overnight bag, watching me uncertainly. Daniel, she called softly as I continued loading boxes, deliberately ignoring her. Please, just 5 minutes. I shut the trunk of my car firmly. Our attorneys can handle any communication we need to have. She took a step closer. I'm not here about the divorce, I need a place to stay for a night or two. Just until I can figure things out. You can't be serious, I said incredulously. After everything you've done, you actually expect me to let you stay here? Sarah's shoulders slumped. I don't have anywhere else to go, your father. She hesitated. Things didn't work out with your father. So I heard, I replied coldly. Something about you stealing from him too. She had the grace to look ashamed. It's complicated. Actually, it's quite simple, I corrected her. You're a manipulative, dishonest person who used both me and my father for your own gain. And now that your plan has fallen apart, you think you can come running back to me for help. That's not happening, Sarah. Where am I supposed to go? She demanded, a hint of the entitlement I now recognized as her true nature showing through her desperate facade. I shrugged, unmoved. That's not my problem anymore. You could try a hotel. I hear they take credit cards, assuming yours aren't all maxed out from your shopping sprees with the money you stole from us. Sarah's face hardened. You're being cruel. No, I disagreed. I'm being fair. Actions have consequences, Sarah. You chose to betray me, lie to me, and steal from me. These are the consequences. As we stood there on the driveway, a car pulled up behind Sarah's taxi. It was Jennifer, my attorney, arriving for our scheduled meeting about the house sale proceeds. She assessed the situation quickly as she approached. Mrs. Mitchell, she acknowledged Sarah coolly. I don't believe we've had the pleasure, though we've certainly communicated through your attorney. Speaking of whom, I need to remind you that all communication with my client should be going through proper legal channels. This unscheduled visit could be seen as harassment. Sarah bristled. I'm still his wife. I have a right to speak to him. A wife who has admitted to adultery and financial fraud, Jennifer corrected smoothly. Those rights are rather limited at this point. Now, Mr. Mitchell and I have a scheduled appointment, so if you'll excuse us. She guided me toward the house, positioning herself between Sarah and me as we walked. Sarah remained on the driveway, her expression a mix of anger and desperation that I once might have found heartbreaking but now only reinforced my resolve. Once inside, Jennifer turned to me with concern. Are you all right? That couldn't have been easy. I'm fine, I assured her, surprising myself with the truth of it. Actually, seeing her like this, desperate, trying to manipulate me again, it just confirms I'm making the right decision. Jennifer nodded approvingly. Good, now let's discuss the offers on the house. We've received 3 so far, all above asking price. By the time our meeting concluded, Sarah was gone from the driveway, though she had left her overnight bag propped against the front door, a passive-aggressive reminder of her presence, or perhaps a genuine hope that I would relent and let her stay. I took it to the curb with the trash. That evening, as I was preparing a simple dinner for myself, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello, Daniel, it's Megan, Sarah's sister. I nearly hung up immediately. Megan had always been close with Sarah, and I assumed she was calling as her sister's proxy. Megan, if Sarah put you up to this. She didn't, Megan cut me off. I'm actually calling because I'm worried about her, and I thought you should know what's been going on. Something in her tone gave me pause. I'm listening. Sarah showed up at my apartment a few hours ago, completely hysterical, Megan explained. She told me everything about the affair with your father, about taking money from both of you, all of it. And, I prompted when she paused. And I threw her out, Megan said bluntly. My own sister, but what she did to you, it's unforgivable. I couldn't have someone like that in my home, family or not. I was genuinely surprised. Megan and Sarah had always been inseparable. I appreciate you telling me this, but I'm not sure why you thought I needed to know. Because she's not well, Daniel, Megan said quietly. The things she was saying, her whole demeanor, I've never seen her like this. She's always been manipulative, even as a child, but this is different. It's like she's unraveling. I fought against the instinct to care. I'm sorry to hear that, but it's not my responsibility anymore. I know, Megan acknowledged, and I'm not suggesting it should be. I thought you should be prepared. She might do something desperate. After hanging up, I found myself troubled by the conversation. Not out of concern for Sarah's well-being, but from worry about what desperate might mean in this context. Would she damage the house to spite me, show up at my workplace, make false accusations to damage my reputation? As if summoned by these thoughts, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. I see you're talking to my sister now. Did she tell you I'm unstable? That's rich coming from her. You think you know me, Daniel, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. You'll regret treating me this way. The threat was unmistakable. I took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to Jennifer, who responded quickly. This is good for us. Keep documenting any threatening communications. If she escalates, we can file for a restraining order. The following day, I arrived at work to find Sarah waiting in the lobby of my office building. She looked more put together than she had on my driveway, dressed in a smart business suit as though attending a meeting. My colleagues nodded to her in recognition as they passed, unaware of our situation. I had kept the details of our separation private at work, stating only that we were going through a divorce. You need to leave, I said quietly as I approached her. This is my workplace. I just want to talk, she insisted. 5 minutes, Daniel, that's all I'm asking. No, I replied firmly. Any communication goes through our attorneys. If you don't leave immediately, I'll call security. Her expression hardened. You would really humiliate me like that, have me dragged out in front of your coworkers. You created this situation, not me, I reminded her. Now please leave before this becomes even more uncomfortable for both of us. For a moment, I thought she might make a scene, force me to follow through on my threat. Instead, she leaned in close. You think you've won, don't you? Turning my own sister against me, getting your father to dump me, making me look like the villain in all this. But I'm not done, Daniel. Not by a long shot. With that, she turned and walked out, her heels clicking assertively on the marble floor. I watched her go, a cold feeling settling in my stomach. This wasn't over. Sarah wasn't the type to admit defeat or accept responsibility. Whatever she was planning, I needed to be prepared. I spent that day distracted, half expecting Sarah to reappear or to receive news of some new treachery she had unleashed. By the time I got home that evening, I was exhausted from the constant state of alert. I poured myself a rare glass of whiskey and sat on the back porch, watching the sunset and trying to imagine a future beyond this nightmare. A new home, perhaps in a different city, a fresh start away from the painful memories and betrayals. My phone rang, breaking the moment of peace. It was Jennifer. Daniel, I've just received a concerning email from Sarah's attorney, she began without preamble. It appears Sarah is claiming that you've been physically abusive throughout your marriage and that her affair with your father was a result of seeking comfort from your alleged abuse. I nearly dropped the phone in shock. That's absurd. I've never laid a hand on her. You know that's not true. Of course I know, Jennifer reassured me. This is a desperate tactic and frankly a transparent one. Her attorney seems uncomfortable even presenting these claims, which tells me he doesn't believe them either, but I wanted you to know immediately. Can she do this? Just make up lies like that? I asked, my mind racing with the implications. She can try, Jennifer said grimly, but without evidence and with our substantial documentation of her infidelity and financial misconduct, it won't get far. This reads like a last-ditch effort to salvage something from the divorce. After hanging up, I sat in stunned disbelief. The accusation was so far from reality, so completely fabricated, that it took me some time to process it. Sarah had been manipulative and dishonest, but this crossed into a new territory of malice that I hadn't anticipated even from her. I spent a restless night, my thoughts churning with this new development. By morning, I had made a decision. I could no longer handle this alone. I needed to control the narrative before Sarah's lies could spread and damage my reputation and relationships. I called Aunt Elaine, then several close friends, explaining the situation honestly and directly. I contacted my company's HR department, giving them a heads up about the false allegations in case Sarah tried to bring her campaign to my workplace. Each of these conversations was difficult, requiring me to share humiliating details of my failed marriage and my father's betrayal. But with each call, I felt a weight lifting. The truth, however painful, was preferable to allowing Sarah's lies to take root. The next week brought a flurry of legal activity as Jennifer filed motions to dismiss Sarah's accusations and countered with our evidence of her misconduct. The judge assigned to our case reviewed the materials and scheduled an emergency hearing, clearly concerned by the serious nature of the allegations on both sides. In the courtroom, I saw Sarah for the first time since her threatening visit to my office. She sat beside her attorney, dressed conservatively in a high-necked blouse and minimal makeup, playing the role of the abused wife to perfection. My father was notably absent, whether by choice or because Sarah hadn't wanted him there, I couldn't guess. The hearing was brief but decisive. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with piercing eyes that seemed to cut through pretense, reviewed the evidence from both sides, including the videos and financial records I had provided, as well as Sarah's unsubstantiated claims of abuse. "Mrs. Mitchell," the judge addressed Sarah directly, "I've reviewed your allegations carefully but find them to be without merit or supporting evidence. What I do find, however, is substantial evidence of your infidelity and financial misconduct." She turned to me. "Mr. Mitchell, while I sympathize with your situation, the court is not primarily concerned with emotional betrayals but with equitable division of assets." She proceeded to outline her preliminary findings. Sarah would be required to repay the money she had taken from my accounts. Our marital assets would be divided equally after this repayment. And Sarah's attorney was issued a stern warning about making unfounded allegations of abuse. As we left the courtroom, Sarah attempted to approach me, but Jennifer smoothly intercepted her. "Any communication through proper channels only, Mrs. Mitchell. I believe the judge made that quite clear." Sarah's face contorted with rage, the carefully constructed mask of the victim slipping. "This isn't over," she hissed, loud enough for me and several bystanders to hear. "You'll regret this, Daniel, I promise you that." Jennifer placed a hand on my arm, guiding me away. "And that," she said quietly, "is exactly the kind of statement that will help us if we need to file for a restraining order." In the weeks that followed, the legal process moved forward with surprising efficiency. Sarah, perhaps realizing that her tactics had backfired dramatically, became more cooperative with the proceedings, though she maintained a frosty silence during the few times we were required to be in the same room. My father remained completely absent from the process, neither supporting Sarah nor attempting to reconcile with me. The house sold quickly, as predicted, and after settling the mortgage and dividing the equity minus the repayment Sarah owed me, I found myself with enough capital to make a fresh start. I began looking at properties in a city about 2 hours away, where my firm had a smaller office that had been trying to recruit me for some time. The idea of physical distance from the scenes of betrayal and from the possibility of running into Sarah or my father became increasingly appealing. During this transitional period, I stayed with Aunt Elaine, finding comfort in her no-nonsense approach to life and her unwavering support. "You know," she said one evening as we sat on her porch, "your mother would be proud of how you've handled this." I looked at her skeptically. "By having my marriage implode in the most humiliating way possible?" "No," she corrected gently, "by facing it with dignity and integrity, by refusing to be dragged down to their level even when they gave you every reason to be bitter and vengeful." Her words stayed with me, providing a much-needed perspective shift. I had been so focused on the betrayal, on the end of what I thought my life would be, that I hadn't fully appreciated the opportunity this represented. A chance to rebuild on a stronger foundation with invaluable lessons learned about trust, self-worth, and resilience. One morning in late autumn, as I was preparing to sign the papers on a townhouse in my new city, I received an unexpected call from my father. "Daniel," he began hesitantly. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me." "You're right," I interrupted. "I don't." "Please," he persisted, "just listen for a moment. I'm in the hospital, heart attack, not serious," he added quickly, "but it's made me think about what matters." I remained silent, torn between long-ingrained filial concern and the remembered pain of his betrayal. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he continued into the silence. "I don't deserve that. But I wanted you to know that I've filed paperwork to transfer my share of the family business to you entirely. It's done, not contingent on anything. Whether you ever speak to me again or not, it's yours." The family business, a moderately successful construction company my grandfather had started, had been jointly owned by my father and me for years, though he had maintained controlling interest. It represented not just financial value but family heritage and legacy. "Why?" I asked simply. "Because it should be yours," he replied. "Because I've taken enough from you, and because your mother would have wanted you to have it. She always said you had the vision to take it further than I ever could." After hanging up, I sat for a long time processing this unexpected development. The business wasn't a fortune, but it was substantial, enough to significantly impact my financial future and security. More importantly, it represented a tangible acknowledgement of the wrong my father had done, not just to me but to my mother's memory as well. I called my attorney to verify my father's claim and discovered that he had indeed transferred his majority stake in the business to me without conditions or reservations. Jennifer advised me to accept it, regardless of my personal feelings about my father. "This doesn't obligate you to reconcile with him," she assured me. "Think of it as restitution, not a peace offering." Meanwhile, the divorce was finalized with surprisingly little additional drama. Sarah, perhaps realizing she had lost any leverage she might have had, accepted the terms outlined by the judge. My life began to take on new shape and direction. A new home, full ownership of the family business, and gradually, new social connections in my new city. 6 months after I had walked in on Sarah and my father in that Maui villa, I received a text message from an unknown number. "I've started seeing a therapist. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. I'm sorry, Daniel. Truly sorry." "Sarah," I didn't respond, but I found that the message didn't trigger the anger or pain it once would have. Instead, I felt a distant sympathy for her, not enough to invite her back into my life in any capacity, but enough to hope that she might eventually become a better person than the one who had caused so much damage. As for my father, his health recovered from the heart attack, according to occasional updates from Aunt Elaine. He had sold his house and moved to a smaller condo, seeming to embrace a quieter life. I didn't reach out to him, nor did I return his occasional tentative messages, but the white-hot anger I had felt toward him had gradually cooled to a dull ache, a permanent scar but no longer an open wound. On the anniversary of the day I had left Hawaii, I found myself sitting in the backyard of my new home, reflecting on the year that had passed. The betrayal that had seemed world-ending had, in fact, been the catalyst for rebuilding my life on terms that were authentically mine. I had learned painful but necessary lessons about trust, about the human capacity for deception, but also about my own capacity for resilience. As the sun set, casting long shadows across my small but meticulously maintained garden, I raised a glass in a silent toast, not to what I had lost, but to what I had found in its place: strength I didn't know I possessed, friendships that had deepened through crisis, and the knowledge that I could survive even the most intimate betrayal and emerge not just intact, but somehow more whole than before. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear, and I knew there would be days when the past reached out with painful fingers to remind me of its presence. But sitting there in the gathering dusk, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again so soon: hope. Not the naive hope of someone untested by life's cruelties, but the tempered, resilient hope of someone who had seen the worst and survived to build something new from the ashes. Sarah and my father had taken much from me: trust, innocence, the future I had planned. But they had inadvertently given me something too: the freedom to create a life that was authentically mine, unburdened by others' expectations or betrayals. It wasn't the ending I would have chosen, but as I sat in my garden watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky, I realized that perhaps it was the beginning I had needed all along.